1. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient cosmos in bronze. The storm-tossed waters off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1900 yielded more than just shipwrecked pottery. They yielded a conundrum that would dismantle the linear narrative of technological progress. Sponge divers recovered a calcified lump of corroded bronze and wood, initially dismissed as nautical debris. Decades later, painstaking X-ray and gamma-ray analysis revealed the lump to be the fragmented remains of a staggeringly complex device, a clockwork universe housed in a wooden case no larger than a shoebox. Dated to between 150 and 100 BCE, the Antikythera mechanism consists of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, meticulously engineered with teeth cut at precise angles. It was, in essence, an analog computer of profound sophistication. Its purpose was not to navigate the sea, but to chart the heavens. By turning a hand crank, an operator could calculate the positions of the sun, moon, and likely the 5 known planets, predict lunar and solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and even track the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games. The mechanism modeled celestial motions, accounting for elliptical orbits and lunar anomalies like retrograde motion, using mathematical principles not formally documented until over a millennium later. Its construction implies a lost lineage of Greek astronomy and precision engineering, a knowledge stream that vanished for nearly 1,500 years. The level of miniaturization and gear train complexity would not be seen again until the rise of European cathedral clocks in the 14th century. The Antikythera mechanism stands as a silent, corroded testament to a path not taken, a profound question cast in bronze. What entire schools of thought, what manuals of mechanical philosophy were lost in the fires of library burnings and the collapse of civilizations, leaving this single inexplicable artifact as the sole survivor of a technology that should not have been? 2. The Dendera Light, Electrical Myths of the Temple Walls. Deep within the crypts of the Hathor Temple at Dendera, Egypt, a series of stone reliefs have ignited a century of controversy and speculation, suggesting a knowledge of electrical principles millennia before their official discovery. The central images depict enigmatic scenes, large bulb-like objects with undulating serpents coiled inside, mounted on pillars supported by jed pillars, symbols of stability, with cables snaking back to a box held by a priest-like figure. To the Orthodox Egyptologists, these are standard symbolic representations from the complex Egyptian cosmology, the sun barge motif, the snake representing the god Hapi, or fertility deities emerging from lotus flowers. However, to engineers and alternative historians, the parallels to a Crookes tube or a primitive light bulb are too compelling to ignore. The composition is meticulously detailed. The bulb terminates in a socket-like base, the cable appears braided like an electrical wire, and the box could be interpreted as a power source or capacitor. Proponents point to the absence of soot in certain deep temple interiors, like the Great Pyramid's chambers, as potential evidence for an alternative, smokeless lighting system. Skeptics counter that the abundant use of reflective copper and strategically placed mirrors could have channeled sunlight, and that ritual oil lamps with wicks optimized for minimal soot were well within Egyptian capability. The debate hinges on interpretation. Is this a literal depiction of technology or a profound symbolic language misread through a modern lens? The so-called Dendera light exists in a liminal space between myth and potential reality. It forces a re-examination of the texts. The Baghdad Battery, a contemporaneous Parthian artifact consisting of a copper cylinder, iron rod, and acidic electrolyte, demonstrates that the principle of galvanic cells was physically possible in the ancient world. Could the Dendera reliefs be a theological encoding of a physical secret, a sacred technology known only to the highest priesthood? Whether a depiction of a spiritual concept or a technical diagram, the reliefs underscore a persistent theme. Ancient civilizations may have conceptualized and harnessed natural forces in ways that our modern taxonomy of history has systematically overlooked. 3. The Voynich manuscript, a cryptographic machine in vellum. Since its rediscovery in 1912, the Voynich manuscript has been branded the world's most mysterious book, a 240-page codex written in an unknown script, filled with bizarre botanical, astronomical, and biological illustrations that defy classification. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, its vellum pages have resisted over a century of cryptanalysis by both amateur enthusiasts and wartime codebreakers. The prevailing academic theory posits it as an elaborate, possibly meaningless hoax. Yet a more radical interpretation suggests it may not be a language at all, but the user interface or output of a forgotten information technology. The text's statistical properties are peculiar. It has a word entropy higher than European languages, yet shows structured repetition like formalized code. The illustrations compound the mystery. Plants that are pharmaceutically plausible, yet botanically unidentifiable. Cosmological diagrams of unknown star systems, and most strikingly, intricate arrays of what appear to be piping, valves, and vessels in the biological sections, resembling an alchemical or proto-chemical engineering schematic. Could the manuscript be the encrypted recipe book for a lost technological process, perhaps involving distillation, gas production, or even early genetic manipulation of plants? Another theory posits it as a memory palace guide for a complex, non-linear data storage system, using the images as mnemonic triggers for a vast body of oral knowledge. The most technologically compelling hypothesis is that the script itself is generated by a cipher device, an early analog of the Renaissance cipher disk, or even a more complex mechanism, producing a consistent but ultimately pseudo-linguistic output meant to be decoded only by an identical device. This would explain why statistical analysis yields patterns reminiscent of language but no coherent semantics. The Voynich manuscript may represent a catastrophic loss of not just knowledge, but of the very key to accessing that knowledge, the hardware or algorithm required to read it. It stands as a stark monument to the fragility of information across centuries, a locked library for which the lock itself has been melted down and lost to time. 4. The stonework of Pumapunku. Precision beyond the Bronze Age chisel. High on the Bolivian Altiplano, near the shore of Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Pumapunku, a site that reduces conventional archaeology to silence. It is not a building, but a field of devastation, as if a complex of monumental structures was hit by a cataclysmic force, scattering megalithic blocks like children's toys. The true mystery, however, lies not in the destruction, but in the construction. The andesite and diorite stones, some weighing over 100 tons, are cut with a precision that borders on the obsessive. They feature razor-sharp, perfectly straight edges, flawless right angles, and intricate geometric channels and recesses that interlock with inhuman exactitude. The most famous are the H-blocks, which contain precision-cut notches, T-slots, and boreholes that appear machined. The andesite used is a granite-like stone, rated 8 on the Mohs hardness scale, requiring diamond-tipped tools to work effectively today. Mainstream archaeology attributes this to laborious pecking and grinding with stone tools, sand, and water, a theory that strains credulity when confronted with the microscopic tolerances and sheer volume of work. The blocks are not merely stacked, they are engineered, with complex interlocking joinery that would provide seismic stability, a technique not seen again in the region. This suggests a profound understanding of masonry as a form of high engineering, not just monumental art. Furthermore, the geometric complexity of the cuts implies advanced drafting and measurement systems, a standardized unit of length, and the concept of mass production. Each H-block, for instance, is a modular component. The comparison to modern prefabricated concrete or steel elements is unavoidable. The technological suite required, exact surveying, durable metal or composite tools harder than the stone itself, and a logistics network for moving these colossal weights across difficult terrain, points to a civilization operating at a level of technical proficiency that the historical record of the pre-Incan Tiwanaku culture does not account for. Pumapunku remains an open-air puzzle box, its shattered pieces a permanent challenge to our understanding of what was possible in the deep past, hinting at a school of applied geometry and material science that has left no textbooks, only its indestructible, scattered homework.
5. The Greek fire, the unquenchable weapon of Byzantium. For over 7 centuries, the naval supremacy of the Byzantine Empire was guarded by a terrifying technological secret, a liquid weapon known to history as Greek fire. Described by besieged enemies as a liquid and sticky flame that could not be extinguished by water, indeed, water seemed to fuel its fury, it was deployed through pressurized bronze siphons mounted on the prows of Byzantine dromon warships. The exact formula, a state secret of such magnitude that its components and preparation methods were known only to the emperor and the Kallinikos family, its purported inventors, died with the fall of Constantinople. Modern attempts to reverse engineer it have proposed ingredients like crude petroleum from surface seeps, quicklime, sulfur, saltpeter, or even naphtha. But no mixture has perfectly replicated the described properties: spontaneous ignition upon contact with water, adhesion to surfaces, and intense heat. The true technological marvel was not merely the napalm-like substance, but the delivery system. Historical accounts, such as those by Anakomnene, describe complex pumps, preheating mechanisms, and sealed bronze tanks that could project the stream of fire over distances. This implies a sophisticated understanding of pressurized fluid dynamics, valve technology, and materials resistant to corrosion and high heat. The psychological and tactical impact was revolutionary. It turned the Byzantine navy into a fleet of flame-throwing dragons, capable of breaking sieges and scattering numerically superior forces. The secret was so well kept that not a single recipe or detailed schematic of the siphon device survives in the archives. This represents a total technological blackout, a complete eradication of a weapon system from the historical record, save for its effects. Its closest medieval analogues, like crude fire ships, were pale imitations. Greek fire stands as the ultimate example of a suppressed technology, not by some external force, but by the state that owned it, guarded through a policy of compartmentalization and disinformation so effective that its operational principles remain a subject of chemical and mechanical debate to this day. It was a weapon whose very existence depended on its mystery, a technological specter that secured an empire. 6. The Baghdad Battery, a 2,000-year-old galvanic cell. Discovered in 1936 in the outskirts of Kujit Rabu near Baghdad, a collection of unassuming clay jars dating from the Parthian or Sassanid period, approximately 250 BCE to 650 CE, presents one of archaeology's most enduring and practical puzzles. Each artifact consists of a 13-centimeter-tall ovoid terracotta pot, a copper cylinder soldered with a 60-40 tin-lead alloy, and an iron rod suspended inside the cylinder. When the pot is filled with an acidic or alkaline electrolyte, such as vinegar, wine, or lemon juice, the assembly functions as a primitive galvanic cell, producing a measurable voltage between 0.8 and 2.0 volts.
The orthodox interpretation dismisses them as storage vessels for sacred scrolls, yet the presence of asphalt seals, which would have held the iron rod in place and insulated the top, and the clear signs of acidic corrosion on the iron rods suggest an electrochemical purpose. If linked in series, a bank of these Baghdad batteries could have produced a significant charge. For what purpose? The most cited theory is electroplating, specifically the deposition of a thin layer of gold or silver onto other metals, a practice evidenced in contemporaneous artifacts from the region that show plating techniques otherwise difficult to explain. Other hypotheses include medicinal use for mild electric shocks in a proto-therapeutic context, or even a religious function to create a tingling sensation from idols. The technology is elegantly simple, yet its implications are profound. It demonstrates that the foundational principle of the battery, a chemical reaction producing a controlled electrical current, was not discovered by Volta in 1800, but was potentially known and utilized for centuries, perhaps millennia earlier. This was not a technology of spectacle like Greek fire, but one of subtle application. Its existence forces a re-examination of other artifacts, gilded objects that seem too precise for fire gilding alone, or textual references to shining and enduring metals. The Baghdad battery implies a lineage of empirical electrochemistry, a quiet, continuous thread of experimentation that existed entirely outside the Western scientific canon. It is a technology not of monumental scale, but of profound understanding, buried not by cataclysm, but by the slow drift of cultural memory, waiting in the dust for a modern era to recognize its function and ponder all that was lost in the interim.
7. The Damascus steel, the lost metallurgy of the ancients. The legendary swords of Damascus, forged from ingots of Wootz steel from India between the 3rd and 17th centuries, were not merely weapons. They were marvels of material science. European crusaders returned with tales of blades that could slice a falling silk scarf in mid-air, yet were tough enough to shatter lesser swords and cleave stone. Their most distinctive feature was a mesmerizing, watery surface pattern of light and dark bands, known as damask. This pattern was not an aesthetic addition, but the visible signature of a hyper-advanced internal microstructure. Modern metallurgical analysis of surviving authentic blades reveals a nanostructure containing carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires, an arrangement that even with today's technology is exceedingly difficult to replicate. The secret lay in the specific composition of the raw Wootz steel, with precise trace impurities like vanadium, molybdenum, chromium, and rare earth elements, combined with a cyclic forging and cooling process that took days, not hours. This process, lost in the 18th century with the decline of the traditional furnaces in Hyderabad and the depletion of specific ore sources, created a form of superplastic high-carbon steel that possessed a unique combination of hardness, flexibility, and a self-sharpening edge due to the formation of microscopic carbide teeth. Contemporary attempts to recreate it, even with scanning electron microscopes and precise alloy control, have only produced approximations. The technology was not merely a recipe, but a deeply embodied craft, a synergy between the smith's intuitive control of temperature gradients and the specific, undocumented chemistry of the source material. It represents a pinnacle of empirical materials engineering achieved without the framework of modern chemistry or physics. The loss was not due to catastrophe, but to economic and industrial shift. As firearm technology rendered the melee sword obsolete, the painstaking, costly art died with its last masters. The nanostructures within a Damascus blade are a permanent, microscopic testament to a level of craftsmanship that verged on alchemy, proving that ancient artisans could manipulate matter at a level we have only recently begun to understand with the aid of billion-dollar laboratories. 8. The Coral Castle of Florida, a one-man engineering marvel.
Between 1923 and 1951, a diminutive 100-pound Latvian immigrant named Edward Leedskaunen, working alone and almost entirely at night, single-handedly quarried, carved, and erected over 1,100 tons of oolitic limestone to create the enigmatic structure known as Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida. The site features monolithic blocks weighing up to 30 tons, precisely fashioned into walls, tables, chairs, a functioning sundial accurate to within 2 minutes, and a 9-ton revolving gate so perfectly balanced a child could push it open. Leedskaunen claimed to have discovered the secrets of the pyramids, hinting at a lost knowledge of anti-gravity and the manipulation of cosmic forces. He left no blueprints, used only simple hand tools like pulleys, chains, and tripods, and allowed no witnesses to his working methods. The sheer physical improbability of his achievement has fueled endless speculation. Mainstream explanations suggest he used ingenious but conventional leverage, block-and-tackle systems, and a remarkable intuitive understanding of fulcrums and pivots. However, photographs from the time show no evidence of the massive derricks or cranes necessary for such work by conventional standards. Eyewitness accounts from rare, fleeting observations speak of him singing to the stones or having them float like hydrogen balloons. A more grounded technological hypothesis proposes he rediscovered a form of acoustic or vibrational levitation, using precisely tuned frequencies to reduce the effective weight of the massive stones, a principle hinted at in various ancient megalithic legends. Alternatively, he may have mastered an obscure form of geopolymerization, chemically softening the limestone on-site to mold it before it rehardened, a theory supported by the uncanny, almost melted appearance of some joints. Coral Castle is a 20th-century anomaly, a personal monument built with methods that appear to be a hybrid of rustic tool use and a physics we do not fully grasp. It stands not as a relic of a distant past, but as a modern demonstration that profound gaps may still exist in our applied understanding of mass and mechanics, gaps that a determined, secretive individual might have bridged through empirical experiment, resurrecting a buried technology for a solitary, monumental purpose.
9. The Baigong Pipes, metallic conduits in ancient stone. On the remote slopes of Mount Baigong in China's Qinghai province, a series of triangular caves contains a mystery that challenges both geological and historical timelines. Within the largest cave, and running deep into the mountain and under a nearby saltwater lake, are hundreds of rust-colored iron pipes of varying diameters from toothpick-sized to 16 inches across. They are embedded in solid rock, a granite and sandstone conglomerate, and arranged in patterns that suggest a purposeful, grid-like design. Official analysis at a local smelter confirmed the pipes are composed of iron, with significant silicon dioxide and calcium oxide, but also revealed an unexplained 8% of unknown material. Radiocarbon dating of material associated with the pipes suggests an age of approximately 150,000 years, a time when Homo sapiens was just beginning its migration out of Africa, and no known civilization capable of advanced metallurgy existed. Geologists from the Chinese Academy of Sciences have proposed a natural origin: tree roots or other organic material that became fossilized and replaced by iron-rich sediments through a process of diagenesis over eons. However, this theory struggles to account for the precise tubular shapes, the consistent metallic composition, the arrangement that diffuses typical root patterns, and the presence of what appear to be rivet-like flanges at certain junctures. If the pipes are artificial, their implications are seismic. They would represent a prehistorical, perhaps non-human, industrial presence on Earth. The technological purpose is opaque. Could they be part of a vast ancient hydraulic system, ventilation shafts for a subterranean complex, or conduits for an energy transmission system lost to time?
The remote, inhospitable location adds to the enigma. It is not a site conducive to a nascent human settlement, but rather to an installation of a specific, hidden utility. The bygone pipes exist in a categorical limbo, dismissed by mainstream science as a geological oddity, yet physically present as an intricate metallic latticework within solid rock. They are the ultimate buried technology, not in a tomb or a ruin, but fused into the very bones of the planet, a rusty, crumbling testament to a potential engineering project of such antiquity that it renders human history a mere footnote.
10. The vitrified forts of Europe. Prehistoric stone-melting warfare. Scattered across the hilltops and promontories of Europe, from Scotland to France to Bohemia, stand the enigmatic remains of Iron Age forts with a singular, baffling characteristic. Sections of their stone ramparts have been fused into a solid, glassy slag. This process, known as vitrification, requires temperatures between 1100 and 1300 degrees Celsius, heat far exceeding that of a simple accidental fire. Over 60 such sites have been identified, with the most prominent examples being Tapo Noth in Scotland and the ramparts of Saint Suzanne in France. The stonework is not merely burned, it is melted and re-solidified, often with bubbles and flow patterns indicative of a sustained, intense conflagration. The orthodox archaeological explanation posits that the fires were set by attacking forces, the wooden latticework within the walls, a construction method known as murus gallicus, burning so fiercely it partially melted the surrounding stone. However, experimental archaeology has repeatedly failed to reproduce full vitrification using only timber as fuel. The temperatures achieved are insufficient, and the resulting vitrified material is minimal and inconsistent. This failure point suggests an alternative, more disturbing possibility, that the vitrification was intentional, a defensive technology lost to history. Could the builders have possessed formula for a chemical accelerant, a primitive form of thermite, or a mixture of combustible minerals that was applied to the walls as a last resort, creating an impenetrable molten barrier to seal breaches or deter attackers? Or does the evidence point to the use of a directed energy weapon of unknown origin, a technology capable of focusing immense thermal power, employed either by the defenders or a vastly superior attacking force? The vitrification is often uneven, suggesting a deliberate, localized application rather than a uniform inferno. These forts, dating from 800 to 400 BCE, represent a technological anomaly in the otherwise well-understood arsenal of prehistoric warfare. They are monuments not just to conflict, but to a method of stone-melting violence that our current models of the Iron Age cannot accommodate. The vitrified ramparts stand as a silent, glassy testament to a chapter of ancient combat that was far more technologically sophisticated or terrifying than our history books dare to recount. It is the final, fused evidence of a burned and buried art of war.